There's no such thing as house settling down noises. Written by Aurinkotuuli. It's commonly heard you buy a new home recently built. You move in with your family, and at least for the first couple of weeks, you are expected to go through some uncomfortable noises. Cracks, moans, and clacks, indicating that your house is settling down on its foundations. But no need to worry, this is just a temporary discomfort, bound to stop as soon as the house finally sits completely still. Let me be as straightforward as possible. This couldn't be farther from the truth. Unfortunately, I speak from first-hand experience. I'm a car salesman. I really don't want to get into the details of where I live, since it would only invoke terror in any locals reading this. All you need to know is that I managed to make a small business on my own, and by the time that I was 34, I finally had one of my biggest dreams come true. Through careful management of my company and good investments, I was able to buy myself a house. However, I didn't just want any house. My goal was to build something of my own, like I had done so many years ago when I started running my business. And that is just what I did. I managed to sign a contract with a civil engineer, and after taking into consideration my ideas for a perfect place, we started building what I dreamed I would one day call home. The construction took around 2 years. I was of course nervous about making such a big investment. To be honest, I spent most of what I had for this house. But when I finally saw it, I could say without a doubt it was worth it. I now had a beautiful house in a nice suburban area, overlooking the center of the city from a hill on which it was built. It wasn't really that big, but it looked comfortable, with a nice view of the city. It even had a small garden where my then girlfriend could plant flowers and enjoy her coffee in the afternoons. Once everything was done, me and my girlfriend happily moved in. This was my last happy memory of this place, I guess. I gently closed the door after bringing the last suitcase in, and I told my girlfriend the overused but always popular, "Home sweet home." We kissed near the window while the last sun rays before sunset bathed our home in light. That night, I didn't sleep well. While trying to fall asleep, I heard annoying cracks coming from the kitchen. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but the cracks seemed different every time. I'm not completely sure, but back then I felt like the sounds were coming from different spots every time. It was like something was moving. I tried waking my girlfriend up, having had a little too much celebratory champagne for herself. The only answer I got was, "Get some sleep," followed by a half-angry, half-sleepy moan. I tried to do what she suggested. The noises were still there. They were fewer and less loud, but they were distinct. I had almost gotten used to them when I got startled by the sound of broken glass coming right from our bedroom. Instantly, I jumped up terrified, looking around me in case there were burglars inside. I couldn't sense or see anyone. Once my eyes got adjusted to the dark, I saw that my old glass snowball was on the floor in pieces. It must have fallen down beside my bed table, but how? Our window was closed, so there was no chance that wind could have blown in and knocked it down. No, it just fell. Whatever, I thought. I was far too tired to pay attention, so I just went back to sleep. I heard nothing more that night. The next morning, I explained the situation to my girlfriend as best I could. She wasn't really worried and said that sometimes things seemingly fall on their own. Nevertheless, I did contact the civil engineer to ask about the sounds, and he told me that it was all normal to hear them, because the house was still settling. The way he described it, it would be abnormal if I didn't hear something at all. I asked him how long it should be happening, and he told me that it could be anywhere from 3 weeks to 2 months. I didn't like the idea of having ghost sounds around my house for that long, but what could I do? 3 weeks came and went, and then 2 months, then a third one. However, there was no sign of quiet in my house. The cracks and the moans kept coming, sometimes loud, sometimes like a whisper. But every night it felt like they were coming from more places at the same time. I started hearing them inside my bedroom. Every single night I heard cracks from the walls and the sound of doors moaning. My girlfriend heard them too, but she was way more patient than I was. I couldn't go through this anymore. I called the engineer again, and this time he had no certain answer. He said something about the hill maybe having some faults and getting used to the extra weight of a new building on it. I didn't believe him anymore, so I did my own research. On the internet, I found mostly rubbish. But after digging and digging, I found some interesting stories. There were a few people that talked about persistent noises. Noises that continued to happen way after their houses were first built. And then I stumbled upon something that looked like a crazy conspiracy theory. But it did catch my attention. It was just a single paragraph on a full site of really crazy Ghostbuster-like junk stories. It read, "There are no house settling down noises. You would not believe it, but there are other creatures in this world seeking a place to live right amongst humans. And these creatures thrive on fear and despair. To them, fear and despair feels like cocaine feels to an addict. Every building is completely settled and perfectly still right when it is built. However, the otherworldly beings realize that their prey is about to reside in it, so they try to occupy the property. They come in groups of 1 or 2 at a time, sometimes even more. They find shelter inside the walls, in the ceiling above, or anywhere dark enough to keep them covered. The sounds you hear at night is them moving, crawling, and searching for the best place to make their nest. They push the furniture just a bit. They walk inside the thinnest walls. And sometimes they may become a little clumsy, and they push something down from a shelf in their exploration. But this is just the beginning. Until now, there is no case of them attacking a human. However, they do feed on us, and their tactics are even worse. Since they love bringing terror to people, they start playing around with the residents of the house. They make even more terrible sounds. They become more aggressive. They slam the windows, whisper to you during the night in their unholy language. They make you paranoid, and once you totally lose your mind, when you become an empty shell, they will wait until you die. Alone, crazy, forgotten by your loved ones. Loved ones who couldn't stand hearing a lunatic speaking about the voices coming from their houses again. Then the creatures finally feast on your rotting corpse and enjoy their elaborate hunt. Have you ever heard stories about people dying in their houses all alone and finally being discovered, half-eaten seemingly by rats or other vermin? Well, now you know what really happened to them. You can't outrun them. Once you have noticed their presence, you will never forget about them. And in every house you ever step in, they will find you. Because they know that once you are scared of them, you are theirs. I was, of course, startled a bit. I couldn't believe this nonsense, but it sure was creepy. I guess someone had had a similar experience as I did, and had decided to make some fun of it and make it scary for fools like me. Oh, how wrong I was. Over the next months, my situation worsened. The house felt alive every time I was alone. I started hearing things that I couldn't even identify. Murmurs, shrieks, and other terrible things. I didn't tell my girlfriend about what I had started to believe in. Maybe I didn't want to terrify her without proof. Or was I just scared that she would think that I was crazy? Unfortunately, the situation went on and it got worse by the day. I couldn't sleep anymore. I lived in constant fear of my own home. I was always tired and my work was affected since I was exhausted all the time. I started monologuing and shouting against the things that haunted me. My relationship became terrible. My poor girlfriend couldn't bear hearing me screaming in fear every night. She left me on a cloudy winter morning, taking my last ray of happiness with her. I completely fell into paranoia after that. The cracks and the voices and the fallen objects were always there, every time I returned home. In my desperation, I sold the house at a laughable price and I found a tiny place in the worst part of the city. I hoped that I could escape, but it felt like all that I had read on that website was true, as the creatures in this house had seemingly found me too and took advantage of the situation. The sick game started again. Now I was starting to think that I could actually see some of them out of the corner of my eye. I'm not safe. Wherever I go, they toy with me, they whisper to me. They make my entire house moan like a broken door. I can't stand it anymore. The pistol is shaking in my hand as I type this. In my head, I hear a last small voice telling me that I'm just paranoid, that with some help I'll get through this, that it's all in my head and that everything is fine. But the voice is choked under the constant slams of doors that I never opened and books falling from their shelves. For the first time, I think the shadow at my left is moving towards me. It has been doing so since I opened my drawer and reached for my gun. I don't care anymore. After all, it's just not worth living as a crazy man, a broken soul, full of fear and anguish. My only request is for you to be careful. If you hear this and have heard or are hearing noises in your house, old or new, noises that deep down you know shouldn't be there, please go away. If things have fallen down without a cause, or you hear your windows or doors seemingly closing on their own, get out of there. If your situation is like mine though, I doubt you can be saved anymore. If you are seeing the shadows in your house moving towards you, then you have only one option. Run.